2011 saw the release of LA Noire, which was made by Team Bondi and Rockstar. It was a game notable for being the first to use the newly developed motion scan technology developed by Depth Analysis. Motion scan uses 32 surrounding cameras to capture actors' facial expressions from every angle. The technology is central to the game's interrogation mechanic, as the player is required to use the suspect's reactions to questioning to judge whether or not they are lying. More than 20 hours of voice work was also recorded for the game.
It's a neo-noir set around the era of the golden age of Hollywood, with the Black Dahlia case being one of yours in the game. The game was an open-world, free-roam, case-by-case, episodic style. This was a beautiful choice for the time, and it was a story-driven masterpiece, more akin to an HBO series than an actual video game.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my first playthrough was actually done sort of one case per evening after work, playing with our parents, alongside also watching around that time Boardwalk Empire, also for a few episodes at least with our parents, which was set only around 20 years earlier, which was a timepiece drama as well. So I actually at the time, you could often conflate the two in my mind. That's how good it was, and it's the sign of a well-crafted piece of art that a game could transcend just being a game.
Yeah. As you say, LA Noire was not an action game or a shooter game or even really a puzzle-solving game. It was a story and character-driven game. There had never been anything like this before.
Or since.
Yeah.
The facial expressions at times were quite often so subtle that you actually couldn't even tell. The cases presented seemed like open and shut cases, but turned out to be always a little bit more complex than that. And to be sure of your convictions, you need to leave no stone unturned for clues and nail on your responses during interrogation with truth and lie or doubt. So if you selected lie, you had to have evidence to back that up, or doubt, which basically was suggesting that you didn't believe them, but you didn't need to present evidence. I think they've changed that for the remade version. I don't think it's called doubt anymore. I don't know what it's called though.
Have you seen those memes where it's like press X to doubt?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Iconic.
So I fell in love with this game originally from the marketing campaign. I'd always been a bit of a gamer, and I'd always seen the medium to be the new way to tell stories. Like, it's the new movie, it's the new TV show, it's the new book. You know what I mean? Basically, if video killed the radio star, then gaming certainly is killing the video star.
That's a really good way to put it, actually. The early critical response for this game was hugely mixed. Whilst journalists and critics were always full of praise, gamers and the wider community largely cast it aside, saying it's not a real game, or it's just a gimmick, or it's boring. These were just some of the comments that we've seen made about LA Noire.
Nonetheless, it kept a following to the point really where a remaster was released for the next generation of consoles, then PS4 and Xbox One at the time, in November 2017. And there was an LA Noire VR case file was also released for PS4, obviously VR. There's been largely incessant talks of a sequel, possibly even like an NY Noire ever since then as well.
Since our first playthrough, we've subsequently played it through many more times. You've played it through with girlfriends, I think, and even with your parents, or with our parents, I guess, which was your first one. This is basically a cross-gendered, cross-genre, cross-skill level game that can appeal to anybody, pretty much, that's obviously over the sort of age cap of the game. The concept of the interrogation or looking around appeals to non-gamers and people who are just sort of more in it for the story. And generally speaking, this is a game that is way more likely to appeal to the more casual gamer. It is obviously rated an 18 plus game, so it's not quite like the Little Big Planet or the Mario Party style appeal, but it does have that cross-sell appeal to all of the adults who like to play a bit more casually or who are a bit more into the story rather than the shooting and all the actual gameplay. This is basically just to talk about how it is more important than that though. So LA Noire, as we said, isn't just a game really. It is definitely like a TV series in the format of a game. It was Black Mirror Bandersnatch, but actually good. It's the new way to tell a story, putting the viewer in a more active position of having an effect on the overall story and outcome, and even some of the finer details, while also giving a bit of gameplay here and there, because obviously it is a game.
Yeah, we've seen RPGs from the likes of CD Projekt Red and BioWare over the years provide choices as a way of impacting the story. And whilst the choices in LA Noire are not quite as refined or, I guess, long-term impactful as this, it does make it more of an experience, and it can suitably cross-sell. Like you actually are involved in telling someone or trying to find someone guilty or not, basically getting a confession. And the story does progress even if you get 0% in a case, which means getting everything wrong. So it's not to dishearten you if you mess up, you can still carry on. But there is a good feeling involved in feeling like you've got the interrogations correct.
The brilliance of the facial expression. Hey? What?
No?
Oh, you had something? Oh, okay, yeah. The brilliance of the facial expression technology was highlighted by the 2017 release turned meme of Mass Effect Andromeda, and the 2020 release turned meme of Cyberpunk 2077. Among virtually every other game ever released at this point. The part of games that have always been slightly off are the faces, not matching up to what's being said or not quite seeming alive or even human. But we think LA Noire really changed all of that.
The finding of the clues in the game was kind of okay, if sometimes a little bit tedious or sometimes a little bit cumbersome. I mean, the amount of times that Cole, who's the main character, picks up an empty beer bottle only to say, not important, does really start to grate after a while. But it's a necessary evil to really get to the juicy part of the cases, which is the interrogation. And of course, it lets you explore essentially like the set design of the 1947, LA home or wherever you are looking for clues, which is really, really cool. It's literally like stepping into a time machine at times. And generally, after entering into some of these interrogations underprepared, you do actually start to really understand the benefits of having found all of the clues before. You really can't speedrun these unless you've played through like even more times than I have, as well as also being able to call out your interrogee as lying, because you need to back it up with the evidence. And if you get it wrong, you risk the subject shutting down and refusing to answer more questions. If you get it right, you can sometimes extract even more info from them.
There are some cases where there are two suspects with equal evidence for and against both of them, and in separate interview rooms at the police station, you basically have to interview both of them virtually simultaneously and then finally come to your conclusion of who you think you should charge. This is no easy task, and the NPCs have an almost uniquely genius way of pissing you off and riling you up, trying to throw you off your own game, and it's actually like fairly realistic.
There are many well-known B and C-list actors and actresses throughout the game, with some guarantees that you'll recognise at least, I reckon, half a dozen of them, regardless of what other TV or film, films you've watched. If you are into some of these timepieces as forms of media, then you've no doubt watched all or at least some of Mad Men, with the main character from the game and a number of the other characters having featured in the show, with overarching story elements that go on throughout the game, but each case being its own isolated thing too. It's not unlike a sort of a detective TV show such as The Mentalist, which is a show I actually thoroughly recommend as well, where there's like a full show long story of the serial killer Red John, but there are also subplots and individual cases within each episode and season.
There have been other story and character driven games rather than action or adventure, such as the Quantic Dreams releases like Heavy Rain or Detroit Become Human, and others still. This type of game has definitely been on the rise, and without getting too social study style, with the prevalence and increased widespread viewing of streaming apps like Netflix and Hulu, where the viewer and not the channel are in control of what they watch, and when, like never before, games with this character, story-driven narratives that are works of art have definitely grown in audience size and popularity, and really transcended the realms of just gaming as a genre. This is evidenced by the fact that Netflix picked up on The Witcher's popularity by making a series, and talk of an anime series on another CD Projekt Red game, Cyberpunk 2077. So it's definitely the line between games and media in general is definitely starting to blur, and I think in this case, LA Noire was one of the catalysts for that.
And another factor here is the incredible popularity of true crime. Things like Making a Murderer on Netflix, or podcasts like Case File or Cold Case Detective, YouTube channels like JCS, Matt Orchard, and That Chapter. There are swathes of internet sleuths who just can't get enough of this kind of stuff. There are popular party games like Murder Mysteries or serial games like Hunter Killer, and LA Noire, just like any other potential subsequent release, could most certainly be marketed into this audience, other than just purely at gamers.
I truly believe that gaming is the future of storytelling, even games that don't give drastic choices. Just simply changing your viewpoint from a 180 degrees to a 360 degree, and being able to therefore not just passively view a story, but actively engage and be immersed in the story by looking all around you, not just being stuck behind the camera. With this in mind, I believe we will see more games like LA Noire really become commonplace and mainstream in the mainstream media and consumption ready by the second half of this current decade. With this in mind, given that it is likely to be close to 20 years since initial release, LA Noire really was decades ahead of its time.
I'm definitely a huge proponent and a supporter of a sequel. My personal preference would definitely be for a New York setting this time around, with the sort of still burgeoning young skyline coming up with the old Art Deco and some Art Nouveau even stylings. I guess the whole noir era already, like 1930s, 40s or 50s would still show this. I think that would work.
Although Team Bondi are ostensibly gone, Rockstar Games have often alluded to possible sequels to LA Noire. They are pretty notorious for long gaps between games. I mean, it was literally 8 years between Red Dead Redemption games. It was 5 years between GTA 4 and 5. And the current count is almost 8 years since the last GTA game, predicting a maybe around 2022 release for GTA 6. Having now been 10 years since LA Noire, and now being on the next gen of consoles, the time is certainly right for a sequel to LA Noire. I think that the Noire universe can turn out to be a leading franchise for Rockstar, and indeed a leading franchise for gaming as an industry in general.
And I'll just close on the final remark here that this YouTube channel may be young, but we have already tempted fate into reality with a couple of other predictions, namely Fable 4 and a Mass Effect sequel. So Rockstar, if you're listening, we want GTA 6 and the next LA Noire game.
And with that, that's all we have today on LA Noire. I hope you guys enjoyed one of these more talking piece videos rather than like a lore video or anything like that. We definitely love to sort of get a bit more creative with some of these and talk about some of the games we really like. So it's definitely good to have a proper chat about LA Noire, which is definitely, I think, a game that has very much gone underappreciated since its release.
And let us know what you think in the comments, obviously, as well. If you want us to talk about any other games or any other sort of topics within that, we're always open to suggestions and listening to what you, our subscribers and viewers want. And with that, I guess we'll see you in the next video.
Peace.